Hey, I'm Tanya, your resident behavior analyst, and I wanted to talk to you about yelling at your toddler today. I know that that's a concern that a lot of parents have. I've spoken to a lot of them about how they're frustrated that they're yelling at their toddler and they want to stop, but somehow they always end up doing it again, and they don't even know how it happens sometimes, and they just want to get a hold of it and stop. And I think that first, it's really important to understand the science behind why you're yelling at your toddler. You have to understand why it's happening in order to be able to put a stop to it. What I mean by that is that you need to understand what the purpose of your yelling is in each scenario, because it's going to be different each time. I'll give an example. I have firsthand witnessed a parent on the phone, and the toddler walked up to the parent while she was on the phone and, said, "Mom, mom, mom." Mom tried ignoring it for a few minutes, trying to focus on what the person on the other end of the phone was saying, but it's difficult to hear when your toddler gets louder and louder over time. And eventually, mom turns to the toddler and says, "No, not right now. I'm on the phone. Go find something to do." And she turns back to the phone. The toddler tries again. The mom's frustration slowly builds, but she still turns to her eventually and says, "I said no, go over there." So at this point, the toddler still wants her mom's attention. So the purpose of the toddler's behavior and everything that she's doing up to this point and after this point we'll talk about is for her mom's attention. So at this point, the toddler's like, "Okay, fine. I'll do whatever it takes to get your attention." So she goes over and maybe swipes something off of a table and looks to see if her mom is paying attention. Mom does notice it, but ignores it. So she keeps talking on the phone because it's not a big deal. It was a piece of paper, something small that wasn't a big deal. Then the toddler, when she notices that that's not good enough, goes over and throws a toy. But maybe it's a stuffed animal. So the mom notices it, but again, ignores it. It's not a big deal. So the toddler's like, "Okay, I still need her attention, and that wasn't good enough." At this point, you see the toddler go and grab a crayon. And she looks at her mom, and she gets closer and closer to the table, and mom is ignoring, still talking on the phone, probably not paying attention at this point because she's focusing on her conversation. And then the toddler starts drawing on the table. And the table is white wood, so it's very noticeable. And finally, mom notices, and by this time, her frustration has been building, and it's a very important conversation that she wants to have, loses it, not on purpose, but it happens, and she yells at her toddler. So at this point, she sends the toddler to her room. The toddler actually listens and goes. So let's revisit this because we want to understand what the purpose of the mom's yelling was in this situation. Now, most people in this instance would say, well, yeah, the purpose of the mom's behavior was to finish her conversation. She just wanted to talk on the phone. And that's part of it, right? So I always look at the behavior first. The behavior is yelling. That's what the mom is concerned about, that she doesn't want to do anymore. So that's our target behavior that she wants to look at and she wants to understand. So when I'm looking at it from a behavioral perspective, I need to know what triggered it. If we look back at the story, yes, it was when the toddler started drawing on the table. But if you obviously take it a little bit further back, it also includes the buildup to it, right? Because the toddler was repeating her name, slowly getting louder and louder. Then she's swiping things off of a surface. Then she's throwing something. And then, so the buildup is kind of what triggered it because, emotions are definitely part of the equation. And the mom's frustration is what led her to eventually yell because it kept building. So the two purposes for the mom's behavior, her yelling behavior at this point, are to finish her conversation and to escape or avoid her daughter interrupting her. Now, why is it important for us to understand specifically what the purpose is? And the reason for this is, if this is something that happens very often, which it probably is as a parent, you're going to be on the phone. It's going to happen. You're going to have to have phone calls with doctors, friends, family, whatever it is. And if this is something that happens often, then it's something that you can work on getting better at. So there are things that you can put in place to keep you from yelling in the future if you know what it is that drives you or triggers you to yell in the first place. We call them preventive strategies. So, in other words, her understanding that the purpose of her yelling was to continue the conversation without interruptions from her child means that she can do something next time in the future when she's on the phone or when she's about to get on the phone to help minimize the likelihood that she will yell. It's also important to understand the purpose because her behavior has been reinforced. What does that mean? The purpose of her behavior was to finish the conversation, as I've mentioned, and I'll say again, and to avoid interruptions. And she got that when she yelled, right? Nothing else worked. She tried telling her no and telling her to do something else. That didn't work. Her child was still interrupting or doing things to get her attention, which is still interrupting the conversation. She tried ignoring. That didn't work. So she tried different things, and the only thing that worked for her, that got her whatever it was she was looking for, her purpose, was by yelling. So her behavior has been reinforced. In the future, when she's on the phone, if yelling has worked for her in the past, then she's going to be more likely to yell in the future because she knows that that works for her. The more times it happens, the more of a habit it builds. And that's how you start yelling all the time. It happens. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're thinking of something to do in the future when you're trying to stop yelling. Now that the mother understands the purpose of her behavior, she can put something in place to stop the yelling in the future when she's on the phone, because that specific scenario is usually very similar for her, and so that's what she can do. So she needs to find something where she's giving the toddler something to do that will keep her occupied for most of the time that she's on the phone, so that number one, she can continue her conversation, and number two, she avoids getting interrupted, which again, were the purposes for her yelling in the first place. So in the future, she can maybe have a basket full of specific activities that her child enjoys doing and set that aside for when she's only on the phone. Maybe it's like a special treat that her child only gets to do when she's on the phone. Maybe it's a sticker book with a bunch of construction paper. Or a really popular one that I suggest a lot is having actually like a piece of poster board. It's bigger, takes a lot longer to fill out. Kids are more likely to stay engaged with it for longer. Maybe draw some shapes in there. Like for example, now it's Christmas time. Maybe you throw some Christmas trees in there. That's easy to draw. Little things that they can fill in, have some crayons. Also, bonus point, if it's a poster board, it's more likely to cover more of the table and you don't have to worry about your child drawing on the table. Obviously, keep an eye on them, but maybe that's something that's more likely to keep your child occupied. That's going to help cut down on interruptions. Another thing you can do is make sure if you're about to make a phone call that their needs are met before you get on the phone. Do they need anything to drink? Do they need a snack? Have they gone potty lately? Whatever it is, take care of it before the phone call. It's a little bit of work ahead of time, but it's going to be worth it if you can finish that phone call without being interrupted and without yelling, which you don't want to do if that's your goal. Another thing that she can do is to put a strategy in place for when she is on the phone and her toddler comes over, because it's going to happen. It may happen less frequently if she puts in place making sure that her toddler's needs are met before she gets on the phone and providing her with an activity. But, if the conversation drags on, which it happens, then it's possible that her toddler will need her at some point. And the best thing to do is to go ahead and provide your toddler with attention the first time they come over. Pause the conversation if possible, unless it's a very, very important phone call, and immediately turn to your toddler and see what they need. That way you can meet that need immediately, or maybe, that activity that you've given them they're bored with, so you need to give them another activity. Always have backups. That's something I've learned. That's why a basket of activities helps sometimes. That way they can jump from one to another. And, if they need a snack, whatever it is, take care of it and then get back to your conversation. That way you have fulfilled your child's need. So the purpose of their behavior is for attention. You've given them that attention the very first time and you didn't yell, right? Maybe it was a quick pause in the conversation, but your objective is to yell less and not yell in this scenario, and now you've met it. So it just depends on what your priorities are. But if your priority is to stop yelling, then maybe consider putting these types of things in place, and that will help with that. And that's it in a nutshell. That's just one explanation for a specific scenario that I've come across fairly often and have helped parents with. I'd love to hear of others. If you have them down below, I can help you problem solve through them, because each scenario is going to be different, right? You're going to yell for different reasons at different times. And if you don't understand why, then it's hard to stop yourself in the future. Also, if you're more aware of it, then you can, again, do preventive planning, put things in place to help you succeed not yelling in the future. I hope that was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to watch more videos in the future. I've got more coming for yelling, don't worry, as well as a whole slew of new topics to cover in the new year. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.